Welcome to the Podium podcast. I am your host, Mark Goodrum. Our guest for this episode is Christine Sargent. She is a clarinet player in the Rio Rancho New Horizon Band, but also the founder of the Rio Rancho New Horizon Band. Welcome to the Podium, Christine. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. How are you?
We're doing really well. Appreciate you coming in and sharing your journey with us today. Let's start out by telling us, what is your first memory of playing music and your instrument?
My first memory is, it would have been, well, I did music before that, in the schools, how they do that, and had music in the home and stuff. But fifth grade is when the opportunity to play in the elementary school band is my first memory.
Okay. And was that through a teacher at your school, or how did that come about?
There was a man that went around to all the elementary schools. I think it was one day a week, maybe 2 days a week, and met with the kids that chose to play in the band.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And what brought you to that point of wanting to try an instrument at that age? Was it brought on by your parents, or you saw the instrument, a clarinet? How did that happen?
I think it was back to, there's one memory I have of getting one of those xylophones for Christmas, those little metal ones.
Right.
And I've never forgotten because of the reaction that went on, but I just sat down. I was about 6 years old, I think, and I was playing with it, and I decided I would, do songs.
Right.
Well, I didn't know what the notes were, so I just played, and then I figured out how to do, little songs like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, just by sound.
Right.
And it was Christmas morning, and my grandmother was sitting away in the room talking to my mother, and she was a pianist that just could play. She just could, sit down, play anything, and anyway, so she stops talking and she starts, raising her voice to get my mother's attention and pointing at me, and I looked up, and so I started playing that song, and I just remember that one, and a couple other little melodies that I, could play from in my head. And she looks at my mother and says, "You've got to get her in music. You just don't do that, like that, And I remembered it. And then it was after that I just remember kind of being encouraged in ways like one time I was somewhere and my father was in the family room and there was a band playing or something, and he started calling me, wanted me to come see it. Might have been during a football game or something. And so that's what I think started it. It's just I just had that, and I liked music. I liked music when we did it in school and stuff.
Yeah, and you were encouraged. You used the term or word encouraged by your folks, and that's a big part of that, isn't it? Yeah. So now,
I thought,
Sure. So now you get older, and you went into college. Did you play in your college band?
That's where the little fork in the road occurred. I went up into high school, and I became a really good athlete, and they kind of spotted me for that, and I got encouraged to do that, and it was a conflict with, doing things with band and stuff.
Sure.
And so I went through all that, the marching band and all that stuff, and I really liked the sport, so I just broke away for that. And I know there was another gal, same thing happened to her, and she played too, and then something happened, and then she went back to the music. I don't remember what it was now, but I kept playing in church. We had a bunch of us in our youth group that had been in the band, or were in the band. Some of them still were, and we would do little things, in church.
Sure.
And then in college, in the dorm I was in, I ended up, you had to fill out these forms to kind of describe what kind of a person you were and what kind of roommates you wanted and some of your habits or something. And I remember one of them saying, "Are you one that stays up all night cramming?" And no, I wasn't. So anyway, so they kind of matched you with roommates and your interests and stuff. So I wound up with 3 out of the 4 roommates having played an instrument because I mentioned about playing. And so so I brought my clarinet, and one gal played flute, and the other one played trumpet, and we would go down in the basement of the dorm,
right,
and just on a random basis now and then, and just play little things, you know.
Sure.
I think I don't know where we got the music. I think the one gal's mother had music or something, and we just figured it out. And then after that, I just didn't do anything more with it. I went on with life and started working, and you know, I became a physical therapist, and that just kept me busy.
Sure.
And life went on.
Right.
Well,
that's sort of what we're getting at on this podcast, is that, first of all, that kind of force between sports as a young person in high school or college versus music. How many people have been in that situation? I know I was. And then, of course, from there, you have life that gets in the way. But music continuously brings us back. What made it inside you, your spirit, your mind, that you had to go back and play again? What do you think that was?
I think, you know, I worked all those years, and then when I went down to part-time, I had more time. And it never really left me. It was just always there, and, you know, in church and stuff.
Sure.
I ended up playing handbells in church, and I think that might be what awakened it again.
Yeah.
And
that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. I could read the music, and it just kind of started growing on me again, and I always just liked music. And,
sure.
And I was up in my 50s then, and I started thinking ahead about, you know, things for the future, you know, retirement years, this, that, and other. And then the physical therapy came out again about thinking of ways to help people.
Right.
And we've all heard the literature on engaging people, and music is one of those things that is really beneficial to the older adult.
Right.
And it just kind of was a snowball. And I thought, well, this would be a way for me to not only do that, but also give back.
Sure.
You know, you give back in that way too, by providing music, you know, if you're in a band or something, to the community, but also to the older adult.
Right.
And it just spiraled. So I just went into the mode of, but keep in mind, I didn't have a clarinet anymore. My mother had already passed away. My father was still living. I called him up and I said, "You don't happen," and I had vague memory when they moved, downsized to a smaller home. I remember my mom calling me and saying, "Do you still want that clarinet? It's in the hall closet up there." And I said, "Well, look at it." And she said, "No, it looks pretty beat up, and it was used when I had it." Right. And so they sold it in a yard sale. So that was the end of that. That was like early 2000.
Right.
And so here I was with this idea, and I didn't have a clarinet. But I have a funny story to tell about that, but I can tell you that privately. I don't want to take up your time for this, but I laugh about how I went about getting a clarinet.
Well, you know, that experience I've heard many times with other adults, that, you know, the instrument was sold or given to a family member. But I want to go back to now at that point where you wanted to give back. So take us into that process of how you came about thinking about the New Horizon Band. Maybe explain a little bit to our listeners what exactly is the New Horizon Band.
Okay. Well, yeah, I had that idea and decided I really wanted to pursue it. Now, I did get a clarinet.
Mm-hmm.
That's another story. I won't go into that too long about what I did, how I did that. But and I started practicing on my own, and met with a lady I knew that sort of gave me some, Anyway, so I did all that, and then I decided I was going to do it. I just said, I'm really motivated. I remember most of the fingerings. I really want to do this.
Right.
So I got online and Googled, older adult, and I wanted to target the older adult because I figured because of those health benefits.
Sure.
And I also thought about things knowing that there were already community bands in the area.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I could try to make this different and make it a daytime thing because driving at night's hard for older adults. And, so I actually kind of got it going. I went around, I talked to people, and even found a place that said they would do it. And I said, well, I'm going to keep working on this. Then I finally found the New Horizons. So I had to put that out there because it was just like, there it was. It appeared, whereas before I didn't find anything, know. And so I read about them, and I thought, well, that's exactly what I want to do.
Sure.
So I did send away for information, and it pretty much outlined what I was already doing about finding a place, finding a person, and just taking the steps to build, to complete this mission, and then advertising and all that, and getting people, and it was a lot of work. And it was a lot of time.
Sure.
But at that point, I was determined. I really wanted to do it, and so it just kind of became my older life experience.
Right.
All the young stuff was over and done with. Now this was something that older people can do, and even people who never played before. I thought of all that stuff. That's why I kind of wanted to make this band a welcoming point for all the levels.
Sure.
And so anyways, does that answer the question?
Yeah,
or?
no, you're right on
Okay.
target, and this would be a nice, safe way to tell our listeners that for more information about the New Horizon Band, you can go to newhorizonmusic.org. It isn't just a band, it's singing and different levels, and just the idea of just getting out and playing music. Wouldn't you say, Christine, it's just getting out and getting that music flowing through the mind and soul?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do have a website, www.nhbrr.org, and it just on there has contact information, and it tells where we rehearse once a week, Tuesday mornings, at the Rio Rancho Presbyterian Church in Rio Rancho. And I suggest, if you're interested, just stop by for a rehearsal and just sit and watch and observe and see how you might fit in. Some people may not feel ready yet, and some people may feel like, oh, well, no, that's not me. It's just check it out.
Right.
And we welcome all the instrumentation in a band.
Let me ask you this, Christine. What would you explain, or how would you explain to someone that is listening in another part of the country, if not the world, about if they wanted to go about starting an organization like this, whether it be band, orchestra, or chorus, would the first step to go to the national website, or how would you suggest them to do that?
Well, I would check out the New Horizons International Music Association.
Okay.
And on that site, you will find all the different programs all over the world,
Mm-hmm.
and information about how to develop a program. And, a lot of them have websites. You can pick one and, call somebody, talk to them. We had one woman come and join us that was in another band recently, that was thinking about moving into the Southwest. So she came here for the Balloon Fiesta and decided to stop off at us, and she was going to go hit some other New Horizons band because she wanted to continue her New Horizons experience. She was from Dayton, Ohio, and was in their New Horizons band, so
Sure.
she wanted to do that. But that would be what I would suggest the best place to start. And then if you really, really want to do it and you're motivated and you got to make the time, go for it.
Right.
I haven't regretted it. It's just the wonderful people in our band, the wonderful directors that we have, and it's just been great. We have one gentleman who's out right now, rehabbing, you might say, Ron Lipka. I want to mention him.
Sure.
He's been a wonderful person to this band,
Right.
and kept the ball rolling, and
Yep.
and we grew and grew and grew, and we hit 60 before the pandemic.
Right.
We've dropped off some since then,
Right.
but it's just go for it.
And what did you start with? What was the number you started with?
I hunted for people. I got 8 people and had an informational meeting in my home, a couple of them, and we just built on that. And we had a choral director at first that she had to step down for other situations with her, and then advertising brought a man to our band that played saxophone, and his wife was a retired band director.
Okay.
And Leslie Jacobs. So we got her in, and then she met Ron Lipka at a health gym, I think, and talked it up. He was retired band director here in the Albuquerque area, and then it just grew from there. Then you came in somewhere along the line, and Frank Rivera, and now we have Al Smith, Ralph Harris, and who am I leaving out? I hope I'm not.
It's all a family affair, that's for sure.
Yeah, we've just have built.
Yeah.
And,
now
our directors play too.
Absolutely. Now, before we close, try to explain to our listeners, why music? What does music do for you and your soul and you personally, Christine?
It just has given me another outlet that I enjoy, and that I felt, because I left it years ago, that it was just kind of hanging there. And I do have sort of I didn't go into music, but it's just like sort of an inclination that it was just, in there. And I thought, I really like to bring that back. I really like to play again. It just gives me pleasure.
Absolutely.
And I enjoy helping others in the band with the work that has to be done for it. So it just kind of all comes together.
There you go. Well, listen, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your life, coming by and sharing your journey with us. And we do appreciate all you do with the group. Like you said, I do play in the Rancho New Horizons band as well. And thank you for getting on the podium this morning with this podcast and sharing it with the world. We do appreciate it, Christine.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And with that, we want to thank you, listeners. You can find this podcast at any of your favorite outlets for podcast. And until next time, let's play all the right notes.